You don't forget the sound of a garage door grinding halfway open, or the way a stranger's shadow stretches across your own bedroom wall in broad daylight and makes your home feel like a trap. On June 6, 2003, in San Jose, California, 9-year-old Jeannette Tamayo walked in from school the way she always did. Unaware, a man had followed her inside, and within minutes, her life was reduced to survival math: noise versus silence, resistance versus punishment, and one terrible question: how long until he decided she was no longer useful? When Rosalie Tamayo and Jeanette's older brother arrived home, they didn't walk into a burglary, they walked into an ambush. The intruder attacked them brutally, and in the chaos, Jeannette was handcuffed and forced into a box in the backseat of his car. The kind of cramped darkness where breathing starts to feel like a privilege, and every bump in the road sounds like the last thing you'll ever hear. Neighbors' security footage captured pieces of the abduction: the car backing into the garage, the frantic struggle, the vehicle tearing off across the lawn, grainy images that would later look like a nightmare playing on loop. In the hours that followed, San Jose turned into a city holding its breath, with police searching and a family bleeding and praying, while investigators tried to read intent from a timeline on videotape: how long he waited, how calmly he moved, how deliberate it all looked. Officers and FBI agents worked tips and pored over the neighbors' surveillance recording as the neighborhood itself froze into uneasy stillness, the kind you can film with wide shots of suburban streets at dusk and flashing lights reflecting off quiet windows. But Jeannette wasn't a headline to herself. She was a child trapped in a second-story room in a house she didn't know, where the man threatened her life and sexually abused her over the next 2 days. Violence punctuated by silence, the air thick with the dread that a decision could be made at any moment and carried out before anyone ever found her. Inside that room, Jeannette understood something many adults don't grasp until it's too late. She couldn't overpower him, so she would have to manage him. She began talking, forcing herself to interact, to become a person in his eyes instead of an object, building a thread of rapport strong enough to keep him from snapping it. Prosecutors later described how her constant engagement may have helped keep her alive, because predators often dehumanize their victims. Jeannette fought that dehumanization with conversation, even while fear sat on her chest like a weight. And then she reached for something that had never been meant for a moment like this: the logic of crime television. The idea that evidence is a form of power. She had watched shows like Cops and CSI with her mother, and in that locked room, she began thinking the way those investigators thought: how to remember, how to preserve, how to turn his confidence against him. By the third day, the case outside was tightening like a noose. Police believed the abductor was still in the Bay Area, and the pressure of the search, along with the existence of that surveillance tape, may have made him realize time was running out. Jeannette did what she could from the inside. She listened, watched, and stored details the way you'd store air. She memorized turns and distances from the car ride, landmarks passing like blurred ghosts through windows, the feel of time between corners, anything that could become a map back to him. She also tried to manipulate his fear of consequences and his need to control the narrative. Court records and police reports later described a moment when he attempted to smother her, first with a hand, then with a pillow, until she begged for her life. A scene that doesn't need reenactment to be horrifying. Only a slow push-in on a closed bedroom door and the sound of strained breathing behind it. Then, late Sunday, he drove her away and left her near a market in East Palo Alto, threatening her to repeat whatever story he wanted if anyone asked questions. But the moment Jeannette was out of his direct reach, instinct and strategy collided. She stumbled into the East Side market crying and terrified, and the store owner, Isa Yassin, recognized something was wrong and called police, one ordinary person making the right choice while the whole state watched. That single phone call snapped the case from nightmare into action. Police picked her up, got her medical care, and then something almost unreal happened. The child who had just survived days of captivity began guiding investigators back into the darkness she'd escaped. Jeannette led police using the route she had memorized, each remembered turn becoming a spoken instruction, until she identified the house where she'd been held. Investigators corroborated her information, including a pizza delivery tied to the address, and before dawn, officers raided the location. Inside, they found David Montiel Cruz, and police said he struggled during arrest and was bitten by a police dog. Jeannette's ability to recall the route, combined with the investigation's rapid convergence, brought the suspect into custody within days. In the aftermath, there was no clean ending, only the brutal reality of trauma and the long echo it leaves behind. Jeannette still had to tell her story to investigators and later in court, where her testimony helped secure a conviction. A judge sentenced Cruz to more than 100 years in prison, a number so large it's less a measure of time than a statement that what happened could never be undone. Meanwhile, her mother, bruised and stitched from the attack, stood in front of cameras thanking those who helped and warning other parents not to let children walk alone. The kind of plea that sounds simple until you realize it was purchased with blood.